a little.
Live from Jenna's Lounge in the shadow of the Wisconsin State Capitol, this is WisconsinEye on Tap, featuring Representative Chris Taylor.
Hello.
Chris, thanks very much. WisconsinEye on Tap is a very informal discussion, obviously we're in Jenna's Lounge, of an important issue. You're the lead sponsor in the Assembly of Medical Marijuana.
Yeah.
Are you pushing a bill that has any chance of passing this session?
Well, I hope so. It should pass if policymakers were listening to the people of the state. And by the way, I think we should do more Capitol business in Jenna's Lounge.
Okay.
So if you could put in a word with Robin Voss on that. But it should be the law. If policymakers were listening to the people of the state, this last election cycle, 3 red states went to referendum and passed medical marijuana.
California, Oregon, Washington?
Red states, North Dakota,
Okay.
Florida, and Arizona.
Bringing the total to
21?
18?
No, it's 28
I think.
plus the
28.
District of Columbia.
Yes.
Okay.
So we're the outlier. Every state around us has passed medical marijuana.
So all our neighbors.
All our neighbors have medical marijuana. So
So what's wrong with us? Why hasn't it passed?
will you go up to the Capitol and ask? I mean, honestly, it is. I hear from people all over the state. I hear from Republicans. I hear from Democrats. You know, unfortunately, we've all had a loved one who has suffered either from cancer, some horrible debilitating disease. We now have, you know, we have a lot of evidence on cannabis.
Is this law being widely violated now, based on what you just said?
I think it's being violated because I think when you have a loved one who is suffering and they can get relief in a way that's not taking opioids. You know, we have an opiate epidemic here in the state, like so many other states
Opioid,
all
fentanyl,
around.
heroin.
Yeah, and
But
you
what do
know,
you say to the people that, because we are having this epidemic, that having medical marijuana could lead them, it's like this gateway drug.
no,
The
absolutely
gateway.
not. That people who say that don't know what they're talking about. Actually, in states that have medical marijuana, they have 25% lower incidence of death from heroin, and that's what recent studies show us. Is that, and consistent studies, not just one study has shown this, that states that have medical marijuana have less people using prescription drugs and heroin and less people dying. We almost had 400 people die in 2014 from heroin overdoses right here in our state. So actually, it could help, I think, stem this epidemic because people don't have to go down prescription drugs. Those are the gateways to heroin. It's not pot, it's not marijuana, it is prescription medication that is being prescribed and people get addicted and then they're off to heroin. I mean, that is a gateway drug right there, is these opiates. And we've recognized that, both Republicans and Democrats.
How would your
have done some
bill
good
work? Would a physician have to prescribe it? And the federal government still labels it illegal. So
Right.
where could it be grown? And how could it be prescribed to someone who is suffering?
Right. Well, you know, 28 states in the District of Columbia figured this out. The feds aren't coming in and cracking down on them.
Are you afraid of that now under Attorney General Sessions?
You know, more recreational, I think. They've indicated
Look
that
out Colorado,
that,
look out
yes,
California.
that recreational states, I think, have more risk right now than states that have legalized medical marijuana. But how the bill works, and this is a very tight bill, it's very much regulated. You're not going to be able to just get marijuana. You have to have a physician who's willing to say that you have one of the medical conditions. We have specific debilitating conditions that are denoted in the law, like HIV, like a seizure disorder, like cancer. And so the physician's going to have to write you, fill out a form. You're going to have to take that form to DHS, the Department of Health Services. They maintain a registry. You have to pay a fee, and you have to meet some other requirements, and then you get a registration card. DHS is authorized under the bill to establish dispensaries. So you have to go to a certain place to get it. You're not going to be able just to get it from whomever. Dispensaries are going to be licensed by DHS. They pay a fee too, and they have to go through certain protocols.
What are all the fees? Because you said the patient has
Right.
to pay a fee.
Yeah,
and
there's a small fee for the patient because there has to be a registry, and the state's going to have to keep track of it. So the state has to do some work in keeping track of this. For a dispensary, it's a $5,000 fee initially. That's just a one-time fee,
Okay.
and then there's a $250 fee thereafter, or $500 fee thereafter for
So will
you to renew it.
Walgreens be part of this?
I mean, they could if they met all the conditions of DHS, but we really leave it to the state to come up with how are you going to regulate dispensaries. But you would have to get it at a dispensary. You can only get 3 ounces at a time. You also can grow it yourself, and that was really important to people that they
There's
had
a
the
limit
option.
on how much you could grow.
Yep, another
Is that the
limit,
3
12
ounce?
plants,
Okay.
3 ounces on your person. You can't carry a lot around with you. You only can carry 3 ounces around. And then there's also in the bill also authorizes people to grow it who are selling the product to dispensaries. So we also have a growing provision. There's also a provision about testing the product to make sure it is not contaminated. And so the state would have a very big regulatory function. In
What
doing
about the
so.
argument that this is a precursor, if it became law, for recreational marijuana? What's your position on recreational?
I just think if you read this bill, you cannot conclude that because it's very, very tightly regulated.
Okay.
And our goal is to really help out the very sick people that are in our state that we hear from. You know, we had an Olympian come to the hearing on CBD oil, testifying about his sister who had breast cancer. This was a conservative Republican who never believed that there was anything to medical cannabis until he had a sister fighting breast cancer who tried every medication, every drug to try to get through chemo, try to deal with breast cancer. And he said, look, this was the only thing that provided her with relief. She didn't smoke it, it was vaporized. Her dad, he went through this explanation about how they got this cannabis, what they did to it to vaporize it for his sister. But after that, he came to this hearing on.
What about
from Dan
Question.
Dietz. Dan
Oh, yeah.
Dietz.
All right, Dan.
You have
let's
that
hear.
one, Shelby?
Yep. Dan Dietz says, what is the most effective things we can do as citizens to help legalize this?
Call your state legislators, particularly if you are represented by a Republican, because I have a hard time convincing my Republican colleagues, first of all, that the public supports this. I don't know why they don't believe that. You can look at any poll. We have a Fox poll from 10 years ago in Wisconsin. 75% of people supported it 10 years ago in Wisconsin. We have a national poll, very recent. 89% of people support medical marijuana. And I think that's really because this has touched all of us at some point. We all, I have elderly parents who have all kinds of health issues. I mean, we all have somebody who's gone through something really trying in the medical, with a debilitating condition. And all of us would do whatever we could for a loved one who is suffering.
You're a
that's
Democrat.
really.
Do you have Republican co-sponsors?
No, and I should. That's the thing. I have
Do
talked
some of
to.
them say, I'd like to, but I
Yes.
just can't?
No, some of them have said, you know what, I don't have any issues with this at all. Robin Voss said that. Not, I have a quote, and I'm going to read it because I don't want to misquote anybody. But Speaker Voss recently this year, this is what he said. I'm not an expert on medical marijuana, but I certainly have no problem saying if you have a sincere medical need and your doctor prescribes it and it's done under the normal process of any other opiate, I would be open to that. So I've talked to younger Republicans, particularly younger Republicans. They really don't have an issue with it. It's empowering them to take action, and which is hard when you're younger and you're new to the legislature. But I will tell you, even our governor has said, so he was asked in 2014 about legalization. He said, Governor Walker said, I don't think you're going to see anything serious anytime soon here, but if other states did, maybe in the next legislative session, there'd be more talk about it. So that was in 2014. In just the time since then, you've had 8 states pass medical marijuana.
Is there more support in the Assembly and the Senate for your bill?
Probably.
Okay.
Probably. I bet there is if I counted them up.
You're a veteran member of the Assembly. Are you seeing...
Am I a veteran now?
Yeah.
I've been there,
You're a veteran.
6 years. I'm a veteran.
Does your bill have more support than when you joined the Assembly 6 years ago?
I believe it does. I really believe it does in terms of co-sponsors. I also think the public is so supportive. They feel so passionate about this. And I'll tell you, the most passionate group that I hear from are veterans. we had a veteran, an Army veteran who was in Iraq for 4 years, come and testify and give his story at our press conference, and he held up these 2 giant bags filled with prescription drugs that were his prescriptions over the last couple weeks. And it was, big gallon bags filled with narcotics. And basically what he said was, nothing helped me. I was taking a pill to go to sleep, a pill to get up in the morning, a pill to do this, that, and the other. He had a back injury in the war. He had PTSD. He could not function. And out of desperation, he tried medical marijuana. And gradually, he doesn't take any more drugs. He doesn't take any more prescription drugs, opiates. He was getting addicted. He was having all kinds of side effects.
How is this legislation different than the CBD oil legislation?
Well, because this legalizes all the permeations of the plant. That CBD oil legislation was just CBD oil, and that works for some, but it doesn't work for everybody. And so this would allow you to use all the properties of the plant. And there's over 100 properties of the marijuana plant that have some medicinal function. And so it really, what the research looks at is it's the combination of all those functions working together that really provides the pain relief. And not just pain relief, it also helps with nausea. If you go through chemo, if you've ever been through chemo or know someone who's gone through chemo, we had a physician come testify or at our press conference, who has lung cancer, unfortunately, a really advanced form of lung cancer. And he's a physician, and he gave really compelling testimony about the pain that he goes through and not being able to eat, not being able to sleep, which I did not realize when you have chemo, it can impact your sleeping. And we have really good evidence. This is a very studied plant. This is 20,000 studies of
law
cannabis.
Enforcement, police chiefs, deputy sheriffs, the Department of Justice. Are they neutral, or are they actively against it?
They haven't been actively against it. I mean, they haven't been.
Since it works in all these other states?
It's in 28 other states, and there's probably going to be more states, actually, because it keeps passing, particularly states that have referendum. So, look, this bill says you can't drive your car when you're high. You can't operate machinery. You can't go to work. You can't have one of these dispensaries within 500 feet of a school. There are real restrictions in this bill. So we're not, what we're trying to do is get relief to really sick people, basically, who need it without them being treated as criminals. I mean, that's really the goal.
Is there a penalty clause in this? If you break this law, what?
Yeah, no, we don't remove any of the penalties. What we do is we say, here's exceptions to the penalties on marijuana. That's what we're doing. We're providing exceptions. So penalties for marijuana use do remain. Although I will say some of them are totally ridiculous. Some of the penalties under current law I'd like to see go, because I think they're just dumb at this point. But no, what this bill really does is remove this situation from being criminalized, but leaves everything else in place.
You've seen the numbers, the number of corrections inmates who are there for drug charges.
Yeah.
So that's part of this debate, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But I have to say, marijuana, in terms of it being addictive, is about as addictive as caffeine. It's not nearly as addictive as alcohol or tobacco or heroin. And so in terms of the cost benefit of using marijuana, there are certain people who should never use marijuana. Minors should not. Pregnant women, breastfeeding women, people who have certain psychoses should not use marijuana. Certain heart conditions, the evidence kind of suggests you shouldn't use marijuana. So I'm not saying every person in the world should use marijuana. I'm talking about super sick people who are in pain and need some relief. Rather than saying to them your only option is a narcotic that you could get addicted to, and you have all kinds of side effects, you have another option. I want to give people another option. If you wanted to keep taking narcotics and opioids for pain, that's your option. I'm not taking that away. What I'm really saying, and what Senator John Urbanbach is saying, is look, there is another option that actually for some patients is so much better because you don't have the side effects. It doesn't make you feel horrible. People can still function. This veteran who came and talked about how it changed his life, he went back to school, he got a degree, he started a business, he was able to be productive.
What would you do if you asked that question about
if you were terminally ill and suffering, would you break the law?
Probably.
Okay.
I mean, if there were, in terms of getting the relief that I needed, and there was a safe way to do it, probably. I think we all say, or if I had somebody suffering in my life. I mean, a lot of times I don't hear from the patient, I hear from the mother or the spouse or the sibling,
loved one or the caregiver.
The loved one who cannot stand to see their loved one suffer. I mean, it's very impossible almost to watch someone you love suffer.
Your bill has been sent to which committee, and do you have an understanding with the chair? Will she or he hold a vote on it?
That's a very good question. So in the Assembly's been sent to Health. I have written to Representative Sanfilippo asking him first to meet with this veteran who I've referenced and the physician I know who is suffering from lung cancer. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there about medical marijuana. These are two people who never thought they would use medical marijuana, but they found themselves in these situations of battling really hard conditions, health conditions, and it was what made them be able to kind of function in life and to go on in life. So first I was first offering asking him if he would meet with us and talk about it. If that doesn't work, and we're still not getting any traction, certainly we will push for a hearing. If that doesn't work, we will have our own hearing.
So, optimistic that it's going to go a little bit farther this session?
I think so. I really do.
Uh-oh.
The swag wagon.
Thank you.
Grab some mittens, a coaster, some magnet, or pound stuff from the swag wagon.
No, you can just model it for us.
All right, very nice.
You're a very good sport.
It's lovely. I love it.
So generous.
Yay.
Yes,
I'd
am
love to do
Tap.
this again. I love it.
Thank you very much.